Matt Goodwin has just done an excellent piece about the return of Nigel Farage. Now, Matt Goodwin, as we understand it, Reform won't be standing in this election, but nevertheless, all eyes will be on this by-election because of the small majority of less than 4,000. And will it be the bellwether of what's to come? This was a classic red wall seat that went Tory to get Brexit done in 2019. Historically, very Labour, looks set to return that way. Will this be an ominous bellwether, Matt?
Well, I think it's going to be another difficult moment for Rishi Sunak. If you look at the national polls, Martin, the Conservatives this week with YouGov down to 19%. That's only 4 points ahead of the Reform Party. There does not appear to be a flaw in the Conservative Party vote. That's what would be concerning me in number 10. I mean, this vote is spiralling downwards. And I've been speaking to MPs in recent days who are saying, actually, how low can this vote go? So if this is going to be another humiliating by-election defeat for Rishi Sunak, I suspect, that I think, as Christopher Hope was just saying, I think there are different views in Parliament. I think you speak to some Conservative MPs and they say, let's let Rishi Sunak soak up a very heavy election defeat, which allows the party to draw a line under it and move on. But then, there are lots of other self-interested Conservative MPs, Martin, who are saying, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to lose my seat, and I might not lose my seat if maybe we take a punt on somebody else ahead of the next election. So this is all coming into play. But to be frank, I've never seen the Conservative Party vote this week since maybe the spring of 2019, when, of course, they had Boris Johnson waiting in the wings, and there's no Boris Johnson this time around.
And Matt Goodwin, you have an excellent Substack and you've written a piece today. What if Nigel stands? Of course, that's the massive question. And with this polling, as you say, spiralling downwards for the Conservatives, if Nigel Farage stepped into play, all bets would be off. Matt, tell us about some of the analysis you've done of target seats and areas and the regional discrepancies, the demographic discrepancies of this Reform resurgence.
Yeah, well, this is actually one of the most read pieces I've written on the Substack, and I think that's because I think people can sense that something's going on out there in the country. Look, if Nigel Farage were to announce that he was returning to frontline politics, we know from the polling, from YouGov and others, he would add somewhere between 3 and 4 points to the Reform vote. So let's assume that perhaps Reform would end up drawing level with the Conservatives, like the Brexit Party did, of course, in 2019. And then Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party ended up replacing the Conservatives in the opinion polls. So, look, whatever he does is going to be big news. Now, if you look at the Reform vote, they're strongest in those working class, older constituencies along the east coast of England, round into Essex and Kent. They're also likely to do well in some of those red wall seats, and most of their support is coming from those disillusioned 2019 Conservatives. In fact, look, what would worry me if I were in number 10 advising Rishi Sunak, firstly, is we've had that devastating poll this week that shows that Farage is more popular among 2019 Conservatives than Rishi Sunak. But we've also seen the fact that more than 1/3 of Boris Johnson's voters from 2019 are now saying they're going to vote for the Reform Party. And remember, Martin, this is still a party that doesn't actually have much name recognition out there in the country. I still meet people in focus groups all the time who say, well, what is Reform? Who's leading it? What's this about? So these numbers are high, given that the party hasn't yet, I would argue, fully cut through into the national psyche. You and I talk about politics all the time. The people watching this show know a lot about politics, but most people out there who are very busy and not kind of dwelling on SW1 still might not know what this party is. So I actually think its ceiling is probably a bit higher than the 15% that we've seen this week. I suspect with Nigel Farage, with a bit of money, with a bit of investment, I suspect Reform could probably start inching up to where the Brexit Party was, which was about 20% in the national polls, 20 to 22%. And that, of course, is another nail in the coffin for Rishi Sunak. I mean, there's no way back at the next election if he's losing 1/3 of his vote to the Reform Party. That's it, end of days.
Super stuff. Matt Goodwin, political commentator and pollster, excellent as ever. It's worth remembering, of course, that even with 22% of the Brexit Party didn't win a single seat. And I know that because I was one of those candidates. I stood in Ashfield against that man, Lee Anderson. But